Have you ever felt that strange chill of sadness and disbelief when you hear about a young child disappearing out of the blue, as if they vanished into thin air on an ordinary morning? Please make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel, because we put a lot of hard work and heart into bringing you these deeply detailed stories. And we want to be able to keep you informed of every important event. I want to share the very sad story of an 11-year-old girl named Audrii Cunningham, who was born on February 5th, 2013, and who disappeared on the morning of February 15th, 2024. She was supposed to catch her school bus in Livingston, Texas, but never made it there. 5 days later, her body was discovered in the Trinity River. A family friend, a 42-year-old man named Don McDougal, was charged with murder in connection to her death. Imagine a small town in Texas, where people are used to quiet mornings and the friendly hellos of neighbors passing by. Livingston is one of those towns, home to families who go about their daily routines and look out for each other. In that town lived an 11-year-old girl named Audrii, known for her curious mind, sweet personality, and a spark in her eyes that suggested she had a bright future ahead. She was the kind of child who woke up on school mornings, maybe a bit sleepy, but got ready to catch her bus. She might have been thinking about quizzes, friends, or maybe the show and tell item she wanted to bring to class. But on February 15th, 2024, everything changed for her family. That morning, as she made her way to her usual bus stop, she disappeared. She never got on the bus, and she never arrived at her school. That day turned from a normal routine to a nightmare for everyone who knew and loved her. When a child goes missing, it sets off alarm bells in any community. Parents worry about their own kids, and law enforcement leaps into action, aware of how critical the first hours can be. In this case, the police were alerted when the school reported that 11-year-old Audrii did not show up for class. Her family also grew alarmed after realizing that no one had seen her since she left the house. Soon, people in the town began looking for clues. Where could she be? Was she wandering somewhere lost? Or had she gone off with a friend? As worry turned to panic, they realized her backpack was found near Lake Livingston. That was odd and terrifying news, because why would her backpack be in that area? And where was she? The authorities decided to issue an Amber Alert for her. An Amber Alert is meant for situations when a child is believed to be in danger. It sends messages out to people's phones, radio, television, and highway signs, urging everyone to keep an eye out. This alert helps a community respond quickly, scanning streets, parking lots, local stores, and highways for any sign of the missing child. In the days following the alert, many folks in Livingston prayed for her safety, hoping this was all a misunderstanding and that she might simply have gone off track. Yet as time went by, dread grew stronger, and the entire town felt a heavy sorrow looming in the air. Then came the darkest news imaginable. On February 20th, 2024, a body was found in the Trinity River, not too far from where she disappeared. The body belonged to young Audrii. Instead of finding hope and relief, the community was left with heartbreak. Losing an 11-year-old child is always devastating, but losing her this way, in what appeared to be a violent crime, was almost too much to bear. At that moment, the story gained national attention. People across the country heard about the sweet girl from Texas who vanished on her way to her bus stop, only to be found in a river days later. Parents everywhere felt a knot in their stomachs, thinking of how this could have happened to any child. But the shock would grow even more when the police announced they had arrested suspect. This suspect was not a stranger lurking in the shadows, but a man who had lived on the same property where the family resided. His name was Don McDougal, a 42-year-old who was a friend of Audrii's father, and who, at times, drove her to the bus stop. The idea that a person trusted by the family might have been involved in taking her life made the pain worse. How could this happen? How could an adult who was supposed to help a young girl reach her bus do such a terrible thing? The answers began to unfold piece by piece. McDougal was taken into custody on February 16th, 2024, just one day after the disappearance. Initially, he faced aggravated assault charges, but not murder, because at that time, law enforcement only knew that a child was missing. Once they found her body on February 20th, the charges escalated, and McDougal was charged with murder. As investigators dug into his background, they found a long criminal record, going back to 2003. This record included assault, theft, possession of methamphetamine, and even child molestation, for which he had spent 2 years in prison. More recently, he served 2 years for unauthorized use of a vehicle, finishing that sentence in September 2022. These details painted a picture of a man who had been in frequent trouble with the law, yet somehow continued to move through the system and eventually end up living close to a family with a young daughter. Before his arrest, McDougal had posted on Facebook that he was not guilty. Many people might have wanted to believe him. Perhaps they thought he had turned his life around. Maybe they thought he was just a flawed person who made mistakes in the past, but was harmless in everyday life. However, once the evidence pointed to him in connection with the disappearance, the community could not help but feel betrayed. Imagine letting someone who has a criminal history around your child, believing it is safe, only to find out that this person is the main suspect when your child vanishes. That sense of betrayal is something many in Livingston expressed as the story unfolded. An autopsy revealed that little Audrii died from blunt head trauma, meaning she was struck forcefully on the head. The medical examiner's finding of blunt force was heartbreaking, proving that her death was not accidental. She did not drown accidentally or get lost by chance. Instead, someone inflicted harm. Knowing that a child's final moments involved violence made the tragedy even more painful. Her funeral, or memorial service, was held on March 2nd, 2024. Friends, neighbors, teachers, and relatives came together to say goodbye to a girl who had just turned 11 only 10 days before she went missing. They remembered her as cheerful, inquisitive, and loving. People placed flowers, wrote heartfelt notes, and comforted one another. The sense that this was not just an isolated crime, but a deep wound for an entire community, was obvious to everyone. During those early weeks, the media coverage of her case grew. Locals who knew her described how she was the kind of girl who made friends easily, the sort of child who might skip happily down the driveway in the morning if she was in a good mood, or who might chatter excitedly about things she learned at school. The thought that her final moments were stolen from her by violence was almost too harsh to bear. Parents from all over the area wanted to hug their children a bit tighter, reminding them never to trust just anyone, even if that person seems friendly or close to the family. By April 22nd, 2024, the legal system took a further step, indicting McDougal on 2 counts of capital murder. Capital murder charges are very serious. If he is found guilty, it could lead to a sentence of life in prison without parole, or in some cases the death penalty, depending on how state laws apply. This was a signal that law enforcement believed they had enough evidence to show that he intentionally caused her death, possibly under conditions that satisfied the definition of capital murder. As the case advanced, McDougal remained in custody without bail, meaning he would not be released while the court process continued. This gave some measure of relief to those who worried about the safety of children in the community. The idea that he might walk free was a terrifying one. In the midst of all this, many began to ask how an 11-year-old could have ended up alone with a man who had such a disturbing record. Did the family know about his past convictions, which included child molestation? Were they aware of the length of his criminal history, or how he was arrested several times over the last 2 decades? Some suspected that maybe the father believed McDougal had changed, or that he had paid his debt to society, or that he was just a friend who was there to help. Even if the father knew about the convictions, he might have believed that McDougal would not harm his own friend's daughter. People in small towns sometimes give second chances more easily, especially if they have known someone for years or if that person has done small favors, like giving rides to the bus stop. But as this case shows, trust can be misplaced, and the results can be tragic. While the story was heartbreaking on its own, it also highlighted bigger problems about how we handle individuals with serious criminal records in the community. Should there be stricter monitoring of people who have abused children in the past? Should families be more thoroughly informed when a known offender is living on their property or spending time near their children? These questions do not have easy answers. Many towns face the same challenges, not just in Texas, but all around the country. By the time a tragedy occurs, it's too late for regrets. That is what made this story resonate so widely, as people recognize the situation that any unsuspecting family could fall into if they're not vigilant. From the moment the Amber Alert went out until the day they found her body, a group of dedicated individuals searched for any sign of the missing girl. Volunteers, law enforcement officers, and even people from neighboring towns joined in. They combed through wooded areas, checked along the shoreline of Lake Livingston, and asked local residents if they had seen anything unusual. The fact that her body ended up in the Trinity River 5 days after she disappeared raised many questions. How did she get there? Was she placed there shortly after she disappeared, or later? Could someone have used a vehicle to transport her? Investigators looked at every piece of evidence, from footprints in the mud to potential witnesses who might have heard something. Meanwhile, the shock never left the faces of the searchers, who feared from the beginning that they might find the worst. By the time the autopsy report came out, the cause of death was confirmed as blunt head trauma, leaving no doubt that a crime was committed. The local newspaper wrote stories about how residents reacted to each new development. Mothers and fathers talked about the importance of reminding children not to go anywhere alone with someone, even a family friend, unless they absolutely trust that person. They also spoke about the need to pay attention if a child feels uncomfortable around someone or shows any sign of fear. One teacher from the local school said that many students in the same age group as Audrii were deeply affected, realizing that the world could be scary even in a place like Livingston. It became impossible to separate the name of 11-year-old Audrii from the man who was now charged with her murder, and that weighed heavily on people's hearts. As more details emerged about how McDougal had a troubling record, some folks asked why there was not more oversight. Others pointed out that people with criminal histories can still find ways to live near families, and that sometimes they keep their past hidden or downplay it. Possibly, the father never understood how dangerous McDougal could be. Or maybe he did, but believed in giving him a chance. In a small town, lines can blur between forgiveness, second chances, and caution, which can lead to situations where a child's safety is unintentionally put at risk. Those who had known McDougal described him in conflicting ways. Some said that he kept himself. Others claimed that he seemed eager to be helpful around the property, as though he wanted to prove he was useful. Some recalled seeing him drive away with the family or help run errands. Very few would have guessed that he might have the capacity to harm an 11-year-old. Yet the charges stated that after or during a disagreement, or for some other twisted reason, he harmed her. This remains one of the most haunting parts of the case. A trusted friend who might have quietly planned or spontaneously carried out a vicious act against an innocent child. Across town, people began leaving flowers, stuffed animals, and messages of love near the place where she disappeared. Others placed memorials near the Trinity River. A few arranged candlelight vigils. They wanted to show her family that they were not alone, that the entire community felt their pain. The father, devastated beyond measure, had to cope not only with the loss of his daughter, but also with the knowledge that a person he had let near his family was the one arrested for her murder. That guilt and anguish weighed on him. Even strangers who followed the case in the news said they could not imagine the heartbreak that father felt when he realized that the man who sometimes drove his daughter to school might have ended her life. While the media picked up the story and gave it national attention, local outlets focused on the everyday people who were left behind to deal with the sorrow. They interviewed her teachers, who described a bright girl who asked lots of questions and was always ready to help a classmate. They spoke to neighbors who recalled her riding a bike in the summer or playing pretend games in the backyard. Everyone had some small memory of her, like the day she wore a funny hat to a neighborhood barbecue or the day she proudly showed off a school art project. These memories made it clear that she was more than a headline. She was a child with a real personality, a child who had just turned 11 only 10 days before she vanished. Meanwhile, the court proceedings drew attention from across the region. People wondered what the official motive might be. Why would McDougal do such a thing? Did he panic while driving her and something went wrong? Was it intentional from a start, or a sudden outburst of violence? The charges of capital murder suggested that prosecutors believed it was done intentionally or under circumstances that met the criteria for the highest level of homicide. As details were still emerging, many in the community followed each hearing closely, hoping that justice will be served swiftly. They saw in this case not just a single tragedy, but a symbol of how dangerous things could happen to the most vulnerable among us. In that same time period, some community members and local organizations began pushing for changes, such as improving background checks for people living on property with children, or setting up more structured ways of verifying that individuals with violent or sexual crime records had no contact with minors. Others wanted to create more local resources so families could see if someone had a certain type of criminal record before letting them get close to their kids. These are complicated issues because laws vary, and sometimes property owners are not required to screen people who move in, especially if they are considered family friends. But for many, the murder of young Audrii was a wake-up call that more caution could be necessary. As for the law enforcement side, the local police and the Texas Rangers were commended for acting quickly. The day after the disappearance, they had McDougal in custody for aggravated assault, even though they could not yet charge him with murder at that point. Some say that if they had not moved so fast, he might have fled or covered his tracks more thoroughly. Others worry that maybe if they had known earlier about his record and had kept a watchful eye, the tragedy might have been prevented in the first place. Such reflections are painful, and they often accompany tragedies when people realize that small steps, taken earlier, might have saved a life. As days stretched into weeks, the sorrow remained. On March 2nd, 2024, the memorial service took place, where her small casket, covered with flowers, was accompanied by her grieving family and friends. People cried openly, telling stories about how cheerful she was, how she liked certain cartoons, or how she enjoyed drawing pictures in her free time. They spoke about how they never wanted to forget her laugh, and how they would do everything possible to make sure no other family had to go through such a nightmare. The service was a blend of tears and sweet memories, with local pastors offering prayers and local musicians playing soft tunes in her honor. Despite the heartbreak, the community found ways to show their love for the family. They organized a fundraiser to help cover funeral costs and any other expenses the family might face in seeking justice. Some placed ribbons around trees in her favorite color. Others prepared home-cooked meals so that the family, weighed down by sorrow, would not have to think about cooking. In these small acts of kindness, people found a sense of unity, a sign that even when darkness strikes, folks can still come together to support one another. Yet there was no way around it. An 11-year-old was gone, and a friend of the father was the main suspect. When mid-April arrived, the big announcement came on April 22nd, 2024. A grand jury indicted McDougal on 2 counts of capital murder. This indicated that the prosecutors believed they had a strong case, complete with evidence and possible aggravating circumstances that pointed to a willful act rather than an accident. The difference between typical murder charges and capital murder charges can be significant because capital murder can carry the harshest penalties, including life in prison without parole or possibly the death penalty in Texas. This news brought a measure of relief to those who worried that the legal system might not treat the crime seriously enough. But it also drove home the depth of the tragedy. The law does not usually bring such charges unless something truly horrible took place. Along with the official charges, details continued to come out about McDougal's record. He had assaulted people, stolen property, possessed methamphetamine, and had been convicted of child molestation. He served prison time, but was later released. People asked how it was possible that someone with these crimes on his record was able to live near a family with a young girl. Some said that the father himself might have believed in second chances or might have known McDougal from before, thinking he was not a threat. Others pointed out that perhaps no one had taken the time to check his full history, or that they simply did not want to judge him too harshly based on his past convictions. In any case, the result was a heartbreak that no one would forget. During all these developments, the community tried to move forward, but it was hard. Kids who knew Audrii from school needed counseling. Teachers spent time reminding students about basic safety rules, like not going anywhere with someone they do not feel comfortable with, always speaking up if something feels wrong, and telling a grown-up if they sense danger. Parents worried about whether they should walk their kids to the bus stop themselves each day. The story of her disappearance and murder had an impact that went beyond just her circle of friends. It made everyone reevaluate how quickly life can change and how easily trust can be broken. Meanwhile, the police continued to gather forensic evidence that could be used in court. They looked at any signs of violence at the location near the lake, or near the place where she was last seen alive, or inside the suspect's trailer. They asked themselves questions like, did someone see McDougal driving a vehicle near the Trinity River? Did security cameras catch a glimpse of him? Were there footprints or tire tracks? Could phone records reveal that he traveled out there on the day she disappeared? The puzzle pieces had to fit together to make a strong case, especially if it was going to be tried as a capital murder. Some local legal experts explained that capital murder requires meeting specific conditions, such as the victim being a child, or the murder happening during another felony. In this case, she was obviously a child, and if she was taken forcibly or assaulted, that could meet the standard for capital charges. All the while, McDougal kept saying he was innocent. Before being arrested, he posted a Facebook message proclaiming he was not guilty. After being taken into custody, he had to rely on a court-appointed or hired lawyer to help him navigate the charges. Some wondered if he would try to plead to lesser charges, but the facts seemed too severe for any kind of lenient deal. People closely followed each hearing, waiting to see what might come out in the open. The father of the victim, grieving over the loss of his daughter, said very little publicly. He was dealing with the memory that a man he once trusted enough to drive his child to the bus might have been the one to cause her death. That kind of emotional pain is unimaginable. In quiet corners of the town, friends recalled that less than 2 weeks before her disappearance, on February 5th, 2024, she had turned 11. Maybe she had a small birthday gathering with cake. Maybe she smiled widely when she blew out the candles. People who saw her that day likely would never have thought that she would not live to see her 12th birthday. This sense of stolen childhood made the tragedy even more painful. It forced many parents to question everything. Is it safe to let my child walk to the bus stop alone, even if it is only a few blocks away? Is it safe to trust a neighbor or friend if they offer to help? Some parents might have decided from that day onward that they would always watch or accompany their child, no matter how busy they might be in the morning. The media coverage also showed pictures of the Trinity River, a long waterway in Texas known for its changing currents and scenic beauty. Never in their worst nightmares did people imagine it becoming the final resting place for an 11-year-old. The image of the rescue teams bringing her body up from the water left a deep scar on rescuers and law enforcement officers who had to handle the remains of a child who should have been laughing and playing. Some of those officers had children around the same age, and they spoke privately about how it was one of the most painful tasks they had ever faced. As the legal process inched forward, the charges of capital murder were read, and McDougal remained locked up without bail. Some suspected that if he were ever allowed bail, he might flee or present a danger to others. Given his violent past, he was not likely to be trusted to show up for future court dates. People braced themselves for a long trial, or at least a long set of hearings, because capital murder cases can drag on if the defendant chooses to fight the charges or if attorneys try to gather mitigating evidence. Meanwhile, the family just wanted closure, wanted some kind of resolution that might bring them a bit of peace, though they knew nothing could bring their daughter back. The memory of how her backpack was discovered near Lake Livingston also remained in people's minds. That small detail signified that she was separated from her belongings early on, either by force or because she dropped them while trying to run or struggle. Some folks wondered if she tried to resist, to escape. She was only 11, so there is no telling how scared she must have felt if an adult turned on her. That backpack was a silent witness to the moment the child realized she was in danger. People who imagine that scene often find themselves deeply saddened. Despite the sorrow and anger, the community responded with love. They remembered her as more than a victim. They put up pictures of her smiling face, maybe at a birthday party or a school function, reminding everyone that she was a real person with real dreams. Her teachers shared funny stories, how she once told a joke in class that made everyone laugh, or how she liked to help classmates who struggled with math. Her neighbors recalled how she would wave at them if they drove by. The outpouring of memories was both sweet and crushing, as each memory highlighted the fact that she would never grow up to become a teenager, graduate high school, or follow her passions. Each day after the funeral, the father had to return to a home that felt emptier than ever. The mother, or any sibling she might have had, also faced that emptiness. Some nights, They might not have been able to sleep, going over every detail, every second that led to her disappearance. Did she cry for help? Did she think about her family in her final moments? These questions can haunt a family for a lifetime. Sometimes communities come together to create scholarships in the child's name or hold annual events in memory of the lost life. People did talk about ways to honor her, whether by naming something after her or by creating a new program that helps keep other children safe. But those are small comforts compared to the loss. Meanwhile, neighbors discussed how they might better watch out for one another's kids. A neighbor might walk with a group of children to the bus stop each morning. Or maybe the local school district will change the route so that children do not have to walk so far on their own. The aftermath of such a tragedy often spurs small changes in everyday routines, hoping to reduce the likelihood of it happening again. Although the father no doubt blames himself, the town tried to reassure him that he is not at fault. The only person who should carry blame is the one who committed the crime. Yet a father's guilt can be a heavy load to carry, especially when it involves the knowledge that a person he knew, someone living so close, was now accused of taking his daughter's life. When people read about this case in other parts of the country, many drew parallels to other heartbreaking stories where a child was harmed by someone the family trusted. They recognized the pattern: a caretaker, a neighbor, a friend who had a criminal record, or who harbored violent tendencies. Sometimes we hear about these stories after it is too late, when a tragedy has already happened. That is why many safety advocates emphasize the importance of thorough background checks, honest communication about past offenses, and staying vigilant. They stress that it is not about living in fear, but about being aware that danger can exist even in familiar places. In the lead up to the trial, the local courthouse became a place of tension. Reporters might gather outside, waiting for the next update. McDougal would be escorted in wearing jail attire, while the victim's family might sit in a quiet corner, tears in their eyes, holding each other's hands. The father might glance at the man he once considered a friend, trying to understand how such evil could lie within someone. Meanwhile, attorneys on both sides would make statements, possibly about the complexity of the case or the severity of the allegations. It is a stark reminder of how the legal system tries to provide justice in situations where no real comfort is possible. Because even if the suspect is found guilty and punished, the child is gone forever. People have asked about the mother, too. In many accounts, the mother's voice is overshadowed by the father's presence, or by the shock of the father's betrayal. However, it is likely that she experienced a heartbreak that is impossible to describe. She had carried that child, nurtured her, watched her grow from a baby to an 11-year-old. She might replay that final morning in her mind, wishing she had driven her daughter to the bus stop, or insisted that she not go alone, or done something differently. Guilt can consume a person, even if logic says that no one could have predicted such a crime. The entire family now must cope with that weight of sadness, hoping the community's support can at least help them manage day by day. Amid all of this, we must not forget to mention that we are sharing this information to help people understand the full story of what happened to 11-year-old Audrii. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel, because your support truly helps us continue to do the long, detailed research needed to piece together these events. We want to make sure that tragedies like this are not forgotten, and that we learn something from them, whether it is about how we handle sex offenders, how we watch our children, or how communities respond to a crisis. There are lessons in every heartbreaking event. One lesson that repeatedly comes to the surface is the importance of paying attention to who lives in close proximity to children. If a neighbor or family friend has a history of violent crime, it is crucial to weigh the risks carefully, even if that person seems friendly or has acted in helpful ways. Sometimes second chances can be good, but only if proper boundaries are maintained. Another lesson is that we must teach children to speak up if they ever feel uneasy or sense that something is off with an adult. Kids have instincts too. If Audrii felt scared of McDougal, she might not have voiced it if she was taught to respect adults and trust family friends. We have to strike a balance between trusting our neighbors and acknowledging that some people can hide dark intentions. In the weeks and months following the tragedy, people tried to preserve the memory of who Audrii was before that dark day. She was not just a sad statistic, but a girl who liked certain books, who possibly had a favorite color or favorite snacks. Maybe she was eager to start middle school soon, or to join a new club, or to try out for a team. All those little pieces of her personality are what we must remember, so we do not reduce her to just a name in a headline. The community might create a scholarship fund in her name, or put together a special corner in the local library with books dedicated to her memory. These are small gestures, but they help keep alive the sense that she was a living, breathing child with dreams. At times, people asked if there were earlier red flags about McDougal's behavior. Did he ever show signs of aggression toward her or any other child? Did he ever say something that might have hinted at a plan to harm her? If so, no one reported it, or if they did, it might not have been taken seriously. Hindsight often makes us see things more clearly, but at the moment, families can be busy, trusting, or unaware. Some might have brushed off little concerns as mere misunderstandings. That is why tragedies like these push communities to be more transparent and to talk about suspicious behavior rather than keeping quiet out of politeness. After the memorial service, people continued to drop off flowers and tokens of love at the site near the Trinity River. Each day, new bouquets would appear, or teddy bears with notes pinned to them, saying things like, "We miss you, sweet angel," or "You are forever in our hearts." The mother or father might have gone there occasionally, standing by the water, tears in their eyes, wondering how everything went so wrong. As time moves forward, the physical reminders might be cleared away, but the emotional scars remain for those who loved Audrii. Her classmates at school, though young, might always remember that a friend left one day and never came back. They might talk among themselves, try to make sense of an event that even adults struggle to comprehend. Some people in the area expressed worry that once the media attention faded, the town would move on too quickly, but others insisted that they would keep pressing for better child safety measures. They hosted community gatherings to talk about making bus stops safer, possibly providing an adult volunteer to stand there in the mornings, or ensuring there are cameras in key locations. It is an unfortunate reality that changes often come after a tragedy. But if those changes can save another child, then at least something good can grow from heartbreak. In these gatherings, they also prayed for the family, hoping they would find some measure of comfort and that they would not blame themselves for being too trusting. The father, some said, spoke quietly about how he wished he could have turned back time or done something differently. Imagine living with the thought that if you had only driven your child yourself that morning, or if you had recognized who your friend really was, your daughter might still be alive. That is a torment no parent should bear. Yet blaming him might be unfair, because the fault lies squarely on the shoulders of the person who committed the crime. Communities often rally behind the grieving parent, letting him know that he is not alone. Even so, that sense of regret can linger, a burden that might never fully disappear. As the weeks turned into months, local and national attention naturally began to shift elsewhere, as news cycles do. But in Livingston, the memory of an 11-year-old named Audrii remained fresh. Everyone from law enforcement to school administrators kept the case on their minds. They wanted to ensure that whenever the suspect faced his trial, they would be ready with evidence, testimony, and a will to see justice done. They understood that while the loss of a single child is huge for that family, it also matters to the entire community, which invests hopes and dreams in every young person. Letting this case fade without resolution would have felt like a betrayal. When asked about the day she vanished, some neighbors recalled seeing a vehicle near the property or hearing a noise that seemed out of place. Others said they were not sure if they saw anything at all, but that they felt uneasy once they learned she was missing. In the aftermath, they kept their eyes open more carefully, checking on children they saw walking alone. Perhaps in doing so, a new culture of watchfulness developed, one that might help future kids be safer. But that does not take away the sadness of losing a child who should still be laughing, learning, and growing. As you reflect on this story, I encourage you again to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support matters so much because it allows us to continue sharing stories that can be warnings, lessons, and memorials for the victims. We owe it to people like young Audrii to remember them and to understand how tragedies happen so that we can work toward preventing them in the future. Sometimes it takes reading or hearing about every painful detail to truly grasp the importance of being vigilant, loving, and protective of children. In the end, the story of 11-year-old Audrii from Livingston Texas is a devastating reminder that danger can hide in someone you trust. On February 15th, 2024, she set out to catch her school bus, carrying her backpack, likely thinking about the day ahead. Her father and mother expected her to come home after class, telling them about what she learned. Instead, by the end of that day, she was missing, and 5 days later, she was found in a river. A friend of the family, a man who lived on their property, was charged with murder. This detail hurts the most because it shows how betrayal of trust can have the worst outcome. Her short life ended because of a violent act, confirmed by the autopsy that showed blunt head trauma. The community mourned, leaving flowers, organizing memorials, and hugging their own children tighter. They also questioned how this could have been prevented if only someone had known more, acted sooner, or recognized signs of danger. The father had to face the fact that the person he led around his daughter might have become her killer. Meanwhile, the legal system indicted the suspect on 2 counts of capital murder, which signals that prosecutors see it as a crime of enormous gravity. Though time will keep moving, and other events will fill the news, the memory of sweet, lively, 11-year-old Audrii will stay in Livingston forever. Her face will remain in photos, her name in hearts, and her story as a warning that we cannot always see the danger right in front of us. We must keep telling her story, not to dwell on pain, but to help protect other children, to remind each other to be mindful of who we let into our lives, and to appreciate each moment we have with the people we love. While our family can never get her back, we can carry on her memory, advocating for better safeguards, more compassionate communities, and a world that refuses to let such harm happen to another child. May we hold on to the memory of her gentle smile, her youthful spirit, and the promise she once held. Please remember to click that like button if you found this detailed story helpful, and to subscribe so that we can continue to share these important accounts. Thank you for staying with me through this long retelling, for honoring her memory, and for helping spread the awareness